Welcome to Wait Day Hands Suop, Great Minds. I'm Jared Diamond, professor of geography at the University of California in Los Angeles. Today, let's talk about inequality. Within any one country, some people are much richer than are other people. Within the whole world, some countries are much richer than other countries. Of course, to be poor is harmful for a poor person, but in addition, is inequality also harmful for a whole country, or is inequality harmful for the whole world? Let's first talk about inequality within a country. Inequality is usually higher in dictatorships than in democracies because the dictator and his friends face few obstacles in grabbing a lot of money for themselves. For example, the African country of Equatorial Guinea has practically the highest average annual income in Africa. The average income in Equatorial Guinea is about $40,000 per person. Why? That high average income is because Equatorial Guinea has only a small population of about 1 million people, but it has lots of oil. The president of the country takes most of the oil earnings for himself. The president's income is billions or tens of billions of dollars per year. Most citizens of Equatorial Guinea have incomes of just a few $100s per year, and so the average income for the whole country, averaged out over the one super-rich president and the 1 million other very poor people, comes out at $40,000 per year. There's less inequality within democracies. The United States, my country, has a myth that we are a land of equal opportunity, a land where a person born poor or an immigrant arriving poor can rise from rags to riches by working hard. In fact, that's a myth about the United States. Among major democracies, the U.S. is the one with the greatest inequality, where the richest 1% of the population receives the highest percentage of the national income. The least unequal, the most equal major democracies are the Scandinavian democracies of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, plus Japan, where nobody is extremely rich like Elon Musk in the US, and few people are very rich, but also few people are very poor. How did it come to be that inequality is much greater in the US than in Finland or Japan? It's a result of different policies of the governments and the societies of those countries. Finland and Japan invest in all of their citizens, whereas the US invests much more in rich people and their children than in poor people and their children. For example, student-to-teacher ratios in government schools in poor areas of the US are higher than student-to-teacher ratios in rich areas of the US. A result is that poor areas of the U.S. tend to remain poor because the kids in poor areas have fewer teachers and they get a less good education. Also, rich Americans usually send their kids to private schools, which tend to have much lower student-to-teacher ratios and higher teacher salaries and better teachers and better facilities than do American government schools. In contrast, in Japan, the government policy towards schools is the opposite of that in the U.S. The Japanese government pays for more teachers rather than fewer teachers in poor areas. So class sizes are lower, not higher, in poor areas. Children in poor areas of Japan get a better, not a worse education, and poor areas of Japan gradually become richer rather than remaining poor, as in the U.S. Similarly, in Finland, yes, there are some private schools. But unlike the U.S., where private schools can use money from tuition and endowments to pay higher teacher salaries than in government schools, in Finland, the Finnish government pays the salaries of all teachers, both in government schools and in private schools. And teachers in all Finnish schools, whether government schools or private schools, get the same salary. What this means is that the Japanese and the Finnish governments and societies are investing in all of their citizens. The U.S. government and the U.S. society are investing much more in their rich citizens than in their poorer citizens. In effect, the U.S. is throwing away the futures of most Americans. But the U.S. has a sufficiently big population, 340 million people, and such big advantages of geography that the U.S. still ends up as a rich country, although it's an unequal rich country. Japan and Finland have much smaller populations than the U.S., only 128 million and 7 million people, respectively. With those smaller populations, Japan and Finland cannot afford to throw away most of their populations, as the U.S. does. But Japan and Finland, despite those small populations, and despite their geographic disadvantages compared to the U.S., end up with average incomes fully 3/4 those of the U.S.